pupils. What have you been up to since the last time we met? Well, I hope that all is well with you and that you are getting your work done. For this session, we will focus on interpreting data, or we can say interpreting information. But before, let's just recap a bit on following instruction. We said that instructions are detailed information about how something should be done or operated. Following instruction is a part of our everyday life. We are given instructions to follow when we are cooking, completing a task at home or at school, when we're using a map, or even when using medication. We also said when following instructions, we have to pay attention to the details, whether given orally or in writing, like we looked at our examination and the instructions that were given. Sequence or steps is very important in following instructions. Like for instance, when we went through the recipes. We also learned that following instructions gives clarity and makes it easy to recheck for mistakes. Now for interpreting data. What does the word interpreting mean? The word interpreting means that you explain the meaning of something. The word information tells of facts provided or learned about something or someone. So, in short, interpreting information is the art of explaining meaning, making connections from a set of data so that accurate understanding can be gained. Now, we can interpret information that are represented on charts, graphs, tables, even maps. When given a graph, a table, or a chart, we need to analyze it carefully and try to understand the information it is representing. Here we have a few exercises that we will look at. Let's look at this graph and see if we can interpret the information that is provided. As we can see, the graph represents a number of pets sold within 7 months. The number of pets were represented in dozens. We also know that 12 is equal to 1 dozen. Now let's look at the questions that are given based on this graph and see if we could interpret the information that is presented on it. First question. How many pets were sold in July and April combined? Now, is there anything telling us directly for April and July combined how many pets were sold? If we look at the bars, we will see that for April, the bar stops at 7. What does that mean? Remember, if you would have read the information given before, it said that the number of pets sold are represented by dozen. So, 1 would mean 1 dozen, 2, 2 dozens, and so on. So let's look. We're looking at July and April. In April, we had 7 dozens. And in July, we had 3 dozens. Now, what would you have to do to find the information? You would have to find, for the 7 dozens sold in April, how many pets in all does that represent? Then, for the 3 dozens sold in July, how many pets does that represent? And you will do your calculation. There is one word there. It says combine. And what does the word combine mean? It means when put together. So there you see, we couldn't just look at the graph and find the information. We had to study it carefully. We had to do some calculation and then present our answer. That is what is meant by interpreting information. Question 2. How many more pets were sold in June than in March? It did not say whether 20, 40 animals were sold in June or whether 25 or 50 animals were sold in March. Remember, they're given in dozens. So you have to be able to determine how many animals were sold in June, and you have to remember again, the 8 represents 8 dozens. So you have to be able to say 8 times 12 will give you how many animals or pets were actually sold in June. Then you look at the number in March. If you look carefully, you will see only 1 dozen of pets were sold in March, and the 1 dozen there only represents 12. So again, there is some sort of calculation you will have to do to find the information. The next question, how many pets were sold in March, January, and June? We have 3 months there, so you have to be able to find the information on the graph and then represent the information after doing your calculation. Here I have for you another chart. This time, this is a pie chart. I am sure that you would have seen it sometime, maybe in your mathematics lesson, maybe in a social studies lesson, or even a science lesson. For this pie chart, the information being represented is the ingredients needed to make a pound cake. Now, each part of this pie chart represents the weight of the ingredients. So, let's take our time and look at it carefully. What can you interpret from what is shown on this pie chart? You will see that the pie chart is divided into different colors, which can also say to us that each color represents an ingredient. What does the light blue represent? The light blue on this pie chart represents butter. We have a gray piece on the pie chart, and that represents baking soda and various spices. The red area on the pie chart represents the sugar, the green represents the flour, and the dark blue represents the egg. Now, if you're to look carefully also, you will notice something with the different parts to which the pie chart is divided into. As I look at it, I can see that the part for the egg, the butter, the sugar, and the flour seems to be the same. So you have to be careful because the questions asked will be based on how you interpret what is represented on the pie chart. Now, question 1. What do the slices of the pie chart represent? And if you were listening carefully, because of how the pie chart is laid out, you would be able to answer the question very easily because we identified that each part of the pie chart represents a different ingredient. Now, who might need to know this information? Anyone practically who is going to make something, but more importantly, a baker or a person making a cake. Now, what do you notice about the weight of the ingredients in relation to one another? As we said also before, you will see that the flour, the sugar, the butter, and the egg has the same weight, while the baking soda and the spices has a smaller weight or is used in a smaller amount. Now, what can we say about this chart? Generally, all the things that are represented on this chart are related to a recipe. So again, the information was just presented to you on the chart, but you had to be able to read and study the information so as to answer the question. Another example we have here is a table. As you can see, the table represents drinks that children have for breakfast. The picture of one drink represents one child. You will also see the drinks, milk, hot cocoa, and juice. Each are represented by a different symbol, but it says or it shows you that each symbol is equal or equivalent to one child. Now, did the chart in itself say in a sentence, so many children like milk or so many children like hot cocoa? No, it didn't. Let's look at the questions and see if we can interpret the data. Now, how many children drink milk for breakfast? If you look, you will be able to see that because one box represents one child, when you count it, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes. Therefore means that 7 children drink milk for breakfast. How many children drink hot cocoa? You take the same step as when you were interpreting the information for milk and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 cups, and because 1 cup is equal to 1 child, it means that 5 children like hot cocoa for breakfast. The next question, what do most children drink for breakfast? How do we determine which one most children like? If we look again, we realize that each symbol represents only one child. And so, because it's the word most, we have to look at which beverage or which drink has the most symbols. If we look back at our table, we would see that juice has the most symbols. Can you see that? Did you interpret the information the same way I interpreted it? Let's move on. Now, you take some time and you look at these questions for this graph. Again, this graph is dealing with pets. This time, we will take the numbers as they are, 1 to 8. Are you ready? How many dogs do students have? Based on the chart, how many birds do they have? How many cats do they have? How many fish do they have? Do they have more fishes or cats? Again, the information is not spelled out to you. You have to be able to look at the graph, use the bars and the numbers to determine what the information would be. We see that the graph is about the number of pets again. The pets the students own are dogs, cats, fish, and birds. So the question that asks how many dogs do the students have? If you look for the dog bar, you will see that it stops at 6. So they have 6 dogs in all. For the birds, you will notice that it stops at 2. It therefore means that they have 2 birds. For the fish, you will also notice that it stops at 7, which shows that the students only have 7 fish. Now the final question, do they have more fish or cat? You will look at the bar again. How do we determine which one is more? We're looking particularly at the bar for fish and cat. Which one is taller helps us to determine which one is more. So out of the fish or the cat, which one is more? Most definitely. The fish is more than the cat. So the students have more fish than they do have cats. Were you able to find those answers? Were you able to interpret the information correctly? Was it difficult? I'm sure that you were able to get some of them right, if not all of them. I'm sure that you all did a very good job. Now remember, interpreting is generally explaining the meaning of something. Information is facts that we provide or learn about something or someone. So when we interpret information, it is the art of explaining the meaning or making connections from a set of data so that accurate understanding can be gained. You would have also noticed that we can interpret information that are represented on graphs, charts, and tables, as we would have gone through just now. Now, when given graphs, tables, or charts, you need to study them carefully and analyze them before answering the questions, because you need to understand the information that is represented. So, boys and girls, I am sure that you have learned a lot on interpreting information. As I always encourage you, make sure you practice so that you get better with your comprehension skills. So, this is all for now. Stay safe and see you next time right here on the Literacy Ladder.